is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All righty then. Welcome to Tuesday here on the Steve Gruber Show. Greatly appreciate your support. Worst August in 17 years for the stock market. Kind of a rough and tumble ride, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a rough and tumble ride for the worst in, like I said, 17 years. But hopefully that'll settle down. Keep all eyes on the Chinese, though. That's one of the reasons that Donald Trump has been doing so well in the polls. Keep an eye on that. Here's something, and we'll get back to politics in a second, but I want to touch base on this because I find this kind of fascinating. If you're kind of a science geek, forecasters keeping an eye on 4 hurricanes, 2 of which are Category 4s, big ones, feeding off the warm water of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, watching for indications that the U.S. mainland could be in for a direct hit at some point, should any grow into a megastorm. A Category 4 has sustained winds between 130 and 156 miles an hour. Hurricane triplets Kilo, Ignacio, and Jimena have simultaneously formed in the central Pacific. It's the first time 3 hurricanes that held a Category 3 rating or stronger have formed in the central and eastern Pacific basins. At the same time, this according to the National Hurricane Center. Ignacio's path should take it close to Hawaii's north edge, but forecasters expect that storm to weaken as it approaches land. It's just kind of fascinating. If I wasn't doing this, if I wasn't doing what I do for a living here on the radio and the television programs that I do, I would be a storm chaser. That'd be my first career choice. I think that would be fabulous. Being a meteorologist, being a storm chaser. I'm just into that sort of, I don't know, adrenaline rush, I guess. What would you do if you weren't doing what you do? Because I know what I would do. I'd be a storm chaser. There's just no two ways about it. Speaking of chasing storms around, Hillary Clinton apparently had at least 150 classified documents, 150 more that have been found. 150 of the 7,000 soon-to-be-released pages. Actually, those released late yesterday now. From former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's emails contain information that is currently classified, according to State Department spokesman Mark Toner. We have upgraded a number of these, Toner told reporters during the department's daily briefing. We look at these emails and we upgrade them as necessary to fit the needs. We stand by our position that the information we upgraded was not marked classified at the time it was sent. Those were released at 9 o'clock last night. Now, here's the problem with all that. You see, some classified information is always classified. And the daily revelations over classified information finding its way into Hillary Clinton's personal email server, well, it raises kind of tough questions, perplexing questions, really, for former government officials who just don't seem to understand how classified information made its way onto the former Secretary of State's non-classified server. You see, the two systems are not connected. Willis Lee, a former operations officer for the U.S. Army in Europe and former operations officer for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, says this: "It is hard to move classified documents into the non-classified system. You couldn't move a document by mistake." State Department spokesman Alec Gerlach confirmed the two systems do not connect. The classified and unclassified system are separate. You cannot email between the two. So then the question becomes, how did it get there? The Clinton campaign adamantly denies any emails traversing Clinton's homebrew server were marked classified at the time. The Intelligence Community Inspector General says potentially hundreds of classified emails may be in the mix. 150 we've learned now today. They do admit that some were not properly marked. So if the Clinton denial is to be believed, individuals in her inner circle would have simply typed or scanned classified information into a non-classified system without regard for its contents. In this case, emails would have started in and stayed in the unclassified system, albeit improperly, based on the findings of the Intelligence Inspector General. But as it turns out, emails literally jumped from the classified to the non-classified system, something the State Department claims cannot happen. It would seem to point to Clinton's staff going to some great lengths to create a workaround to do so. By the way, a government employee doing so would commit numerous felonies along the way. That, according to Bradford Higgins, who served as Assistant Secretary of State for Resource Management and Chief Financial Officer from 2006 through 2009. A violation in addition to criminal charges and potential prosecution would likely mean that person who committed the breach would never again be given a security clearance, period. So the State Department has indicated it sees no evidence of this criminal scenario. Classified documents are supposed to be marked, and State Department spokesman John Kirby told reporters at an August 13 briefing, "We have no indications any classification markings were stripped." Clinton's defense has been that the emails in question were later deemed classified after they traversed her server. But Higgins is awfully skeptical. Emails don't change from classified to unclassified or unclassified to classified. The originator of the email decides the classification before it is sent out based on basic protocols, not subsequent readers, so says Higgins. I believe it would be highly unusual for an unclassified email to later become classified. And regardless of how it happened, there is much criticism of how this was done. They say they knew exactly, Hillary Clinton knew exactly what she was doing and broke the rules. I think what is going to come down is very sloppy, unprofessional procedures, said Steve Bucci, assistant to the former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, and Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, who is now at the Heritage Foundation. We'll keep an eye on that, but you see there's a lot of, they call it mysterious, I call it fishy. Something's going on here, something fishy's going on. Meanwhile, this is an interesting headline that you need to be aware of today. Donald Trump and Ben Carson in the latest poll are now tied in the first of the nation caucus state of Iowa, according to a Monmouth University poll released late yesterday. The survey found Trump and Carson taking 23% support each. Look at this. Two non-politicians collecting 46% of the vote. There's something going on, America. Something very serious that's going to threaten politicians of all stripes. A politician can't fix this mess, so said Donald Trump. That might well be the truth. It's Tuesday on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
Anytime you want to join the conversation here on the Steve Gruber Show, you know we encourage that common sense thought on the Common Sense Hotline. The phone number is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. This part of the program brought to you by Mesa. Good business, good health, and great schools. Mesa bringing it to you this hour. Yeah, at stevegruber.com you can find the podcast by way of Podbean as well. All right, well, our next guest, MD Kittle, is with watchdog.org. And we've talked about this story before. And this dirty pool, I don't know how, this conspiracy to destroy Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, now a presidential candidate, and all the backroom cloak and dagger stuff, the kind of things that make for a good novel or a great Hollywood movie. But apparently there are all sorts of things going on behind the scenes. And, well, more of it this morning as we continue to go down this road. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so give me an idea. But what do we know now? I mean, every time we hear this story, it's like a little more. It's kind of filthy. It's kind of makes you feel a little bit icky, honestly, if you get into public service, that these people conduct themselves in such a fashion.
Yeah, it makes you want to take a shower, that's for sure. I mean, every time you think this thing couldn't get any weirder, it certainly does. But just the quick Cliff's Note version of all of that's transpired over the last 5 years. What is alleged here, and what is becoming increasingly clear, is that Milwaukee County prosecutors, the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, led by a very partisan Democrat, conducted a political partisan witch hunt, basically, into Governor Scott Walker and more so his conservative allies over the last 5 years. It started in Milwaukee County when Walker was Milwaukee County executive as he was making his run for governor. It continued during the Wisconsin's very bitter recall election in 2012. Walker survived that, becoming the first governor to win a recall election in the history of this country. And it would continue to this day, but for the state Supreme Court stepping in and saying this is an extremely unconstitutional investigation, and you've got to stop it. By this time, we've got the state speech regulator, the Government Accountability Board, very much with their hands dirty in all of this, and a special prosecutor that turned into this multi-county investigation that, again, the state Supreme Court ordered shut down, said it was unconstitutional, and ordered millions of documents that were illegally seized by seized from dozens of conservative groups in the campaign of Scott Walker to be returned.
There are a lot of people to point at in this conversation and question their motives and what they were up to. One of those is the Government Accountability Board Director Kevin Kennedy, who called his agency a Wisconsin success story while he was defending their investigation into campaign finance, elections, other ethics and ethics regulation. And yet this GAB, this Government Accountability Board, is right at the middle of the whole mess, is it not?
It certainly is. It is the center point, really, between the major players. And it's extremely interesting and now extremely ironic that the Government Accountability Board, which likes to really hammer home the point that it is nonpartisan, is now caught up in an extremely partisan investigation. What Wisconsin Watchdog has learned most recently is we've obtained documents of email exchanges between the top attorney at the Government Accountability Board, who is emailing the special prosecutor of this investigation in June of 2014, in the thick of the gubernatorial race here in Wisconsin, pitting Walker against his Democratic challenger, Mary Burke. And you have this guy emailing the special prosecutor advising him not to send out a public notice that Walker is not a target of this investigation, because basically that would hurt the Democratic challenger's chances and make her out to be a liar in her soon-to-be-released at that time campaign ad that puts Walker at the center of a national criminal scheme, which of course was all bogus to begin with. If that isn't politics, if that isn't the smoking gun that this is politically motivated, I don't know what is, and I don't know what's going to convince the left in this state and the full-throated supporters, who, by the way, have sort of receded into the woodwork now, the supporters of the Government Accountability Board.
Much like cockroaches in the light, yes.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, okay, so, I mean, we don't have a lot of time left here. The story is just, It's incredible. It's unbelievable. But here's the bottom line, and we have about 30 seconds for your answer. Are charges going to be filed against people like Kennedy or others that were at the heart of this dirty investigation?
That's a good question, and you have 30 seconds, and you need a short answer. The short answer is there is, and there will continue to be civil rights lawsuits filed, and they are really starting to kick up now. Quickly to note, too, that this Government Accountability Board also is tied to one Lois Lerner of the IRS. Wish we had more time to talk about that, but there's also some involvement on the national level, too. But there is, and there will continue to be civil rights lawsuits involved in this. This thing could get really interesting coming up.
Well, see, the beauty of it, MD, is this, that in the next chapter, during your next appearance, we can talk about Lois Lerner. See how that works?
Exactly. A little tease, if you will.
There you go. MD Kittle from watchdog.org. Man, it just gets deeper and darker as we go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Tuesday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
All right, welcome back to it. It's the Steve Gruber Show. It's Tuesday. You can find out more at SteveGruber.com. To find out more at SteveGruber.com, you can go there, figure out how to listen live. You know how you do that? You click the Listen Live button. Pretty clever that way, aren't we? You can also find the interviews from, don't look at me like that. I'm just trying to tell the folks. All right. You can find older interviews on the podcast there. And we have a whole host of them. It's all cataloged. You can go back and listen to my interviews with presidential candidates like Scott Walker, for example, who we're just talking about here on the program. You can hear all the interviews. You can hear my monologues as well. It's all there at the podcast, all powered by Podbean. And then here soon, I've got something new for you, something kind of special we're going to talk about here on the program. A new way for you to connect with what's going on here. I guess a way for you to peek behind the curtain, if that makes sense. I'll give you a way for you to peek behind the curtain and figure out what's going on here at the program. I think that's going to be kind of fun for you. You'll be able to see what we're doing here on the program on a regular basis, some live feeds coming from the studio, no matter where that studio happens to be any given day, whether it's the Mothership studio in Lansing, the Northern Studios in Boyne City, or from the new Outpost studios, which, I'm not going to tell you where that is. So it is. Looking at all the national polls now. Donald Trump is cruising. Now, there's a new tie poll for Trump and Ben Carson in Iowa. I'm not sure if that's going to have any real impact, but nationally, Trump is cruising in first place, garnering nearly 26% of the vote, followed by Ben Carson, which I think is interesting. And the person who has suffered the most from the Trump onslaught, Governor Scott Walker, who nationally has slipped to 6.7%. And I was sitting last night talking to a good friend of mine, Tom, Ivy and I both were, who is a strong Walker supporter. He said, this is the guy that I like. What is going on? Well, when I look at Scott Walker, I think that he's a compelling candidate with a great story. He's won election 3 times to become governor. He did that in a 4-year span because he was elected, won a recall election, then elected again. So he won 3 elections in 4 years. He is a terrific candidate, but he doesn't have that fire, that zeal, that punch that he needs to break through right now. He's kind of a soft-spoken and calm candidate. He is he's more even. And I think what we need right now, or what a candidate would need right now to really break through, is some of that fire and brimstone, honestly. I mean, that's what Donald Trump is winning with. Of course, I say that, but then you realize that Ben Carson is about as quiet as they come, and he's cruising in second place in all the polling right now. So, what is the difference? I don't know. And I don't know why Scott Walker has paid the price for Donald Trump's rising star more than anybody else. Jeb Bush paid a pretty considerable price, but Jeb Bush's campaign has its own challenges. Now, Ivy and I met Scott Walker. We thought he was terrific in person. And in fact, Ivy just stepped in. I mean, we thought he was just great in person.
Yeah, we really liked what he had to say. But, we talked about this before. He's just not visible as like Donald Trump or even Ben Carson. I mean, Ben Carson is everywhere doing interviews. And I just don't know where Scott Walker is. When's the last time we've seen him on TV or doing an interview or anything?
It's been a while. He hasn't been on this program in 6 or 7 weeks probably. And you're right. Visibility is everything right now. And Ben Carson is taking interviews everywhere. So is Carly. Mm-hmm. Carly Fiorina is taking interviews everywhere. And so is John Kasich. These are people. And the other person I see a lot of right now is Chris Christie. But you're right. It's all about, getting into the news cycle.
Absolutely. And so you can see that in all of those people's polls. I mean, they're all kind of rising to the top. Obviously, Donald Trump is storming ahead of everyone. But, he does have a really good message, and he has done some wonderful things in Wisconsin. But,
if your message doesn't get out there.
Exactly.
And in fact, when you and I saw him for the first time, we had obviously watched the coverage of the wars in the streets of Madison, Wisconsin over unions and so forth. I don't think either one of us knew quite what to expect. We thought he was terrific in person. I thought Marco Rubio was terrific in person. Now, Marco's still, doing okay in the polls overall, but it just makes me wonder, why did Scott Walker pay the heavy price? Because as you've watched Trump's star go up, why did he lose the most support of anybody? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I think, the Walker fans may be migrating to Donald Trump. I mean, I'm not exactly sure. But, a lot of people that we've spoken to have said, well, he's just not, he doesn't have the, for the, the drive like Donald Trump does. Well, but that's not necessarily true if you see what he's done in Wisconsin. I mean, his fight against the unions.
Sure, and I'll give you that. But it's the same thing. The same answer I gave Tom last night. We were sitting here talking to Tom was, we need a guy who's going to, basically, beat on his chest or whatever and pound the table and say, here's what we're going to do, and I'm not going to take it anymore, and stand up and make some noise. As far as one of our listeners goes here, the cheap shots at Chris Christie, come on now.
Oh, well,
it says I can see Chris Christie everywhere, and I've got my eyes closed. I don't think that's fair. Well, Chris Christie sits around the house. Yeah, he sits around the house. Yeah, we get it. Thanks for the input. Yeah. So here we are. Let me look at the caucuses now. Trump and Carson are tied at 23 apiece. Next in line is Ted Cruz. And, let me just be brutally honest. Excuse me. Carly Fiorina's in third place, and then Ted Cruz. But let me be brutally honest. Ted Cruz is not electable. You may like Ted Cruz. I like some of the things he talks about and so forth. But he's like that know-it-all that you had in class that comes in that is in your face all the time. And if you don't believe their way, then there's something wrong with you. You need to pound on it, because if you don't, and that's why Ted Cruz, his manners, his mannerisms, he may well be right about things. But you can't swat somebody in the nose all the time to tell people whether they're right or wrong. Well,
and we do have a guest coming up in the next segment talking about him and Donald Trump kind of partnering up and
working the field together.
So that's going to be an interesting conversation. So definitely stick around for that. But yeah, I mean, independently, he's probably not the candidate who's going to win the nomination, and he does have some grand ideas, but he's just not going to.
I don't see. Well, here's the thing. I think that Cruz, Donald Trump, a lot of folks thought he would have faded out by now. He has not, obviously, and he continues to dominate. But Van Hipp will be here, saying that some people believe the dream ticket will be Trump and Cruz. And I've got bad news for you. If that's your dream ticket, you're going to be disappointed come November of 2016. The dream ticket, the best ticket this cycle could produce, continues to be Kasich on the top and Rubio on the bottom, with Ohio and Florida. If you're a Republican or want the Republicans to win, that's your best case scenario with what I'm looking at currently, at least so far. Of course, I can change my opinion, but that's where I am today.
Oh, yeah, and that's strategy. If you're really talking about using strategy to win this election in 2016, well, that's a really smart one.
Well, and you look at what's going on. The Hill is a website I look at often, as you do, as you know. They are showing three candidates rising: Trump, Kasich, and Carly. So those are the three that are rising. The other 7 are on their way fading out. So at any rate, it's Tuesday on the Steve Gruber Show. Thanks, Ivy. It's a great day here. We are at the Northern Studios, by the way, this morning for the Steve Gruber Show. You can weigh in at 888-900-9966. What's your dream ticket? We'll be right back.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
All right, it's Tuesday, my friends, and I'm just scouring all the websites. I think the way that Donald Trump stays relevant is he stays in front of everyone. I haven't seen him on the news in a couple of days. You know, whenever his light fades a little bit, that could be problematic for him. But right now, he has gone from, well, for most of us, none of us actually thought he would run in the first place, let's be honest. And then when he did run, he skyrocketed from single digits to double digits to way out ahead, and it didn't take him very long to get there. Our next guest, Van Hipp, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Army and the former Principal Deputy General Counsel of the U.S. Navy, author of the new Terrorism, How to Fight It and Defeat It. He thinks that this is the dream ticket. Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, as we talked about moments ago, and welcome to the program.
Steve, good to be with you. Not so much the dream ticket, but it's a ticket that is catching fire, and I'm very intrigued about what they're going to be doing next Tuesday at the U.S. Actually, next Wednesday on September 9th at the U.S. Capitol on the Iran deal.
No, yeah, we'll see what happens there. But why do you think this is an intriguing ticket? Why Donald Trump? Why Ted Cruz? Why do you think this is interesting?
Well, you know, right now, I think one reason why he is resonating, Donald Trump is, why he's resonating, is because the guy's authentic. When he's talking about border security, I mean, both, not just the Democrat Party, but the Republican Party has failed us on border security. Don't forget, the Duncan Hunter, who I actually supported for president back in 2008, was a prophet on this. The Hunter bill is law in America to build the fence. We have not done it, but it's the law of the land. We've not enforced the law of the land to build the fence to secure our southern border. So he gets it, and that's why he's resonating. And I hope the establishment and the rest of the Republicans will wake up and get it.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I think you're right. The Republicans can point fingers at the Democrats on a variety of issues, but let's be honest, they are complicit. This is one of those examples, complicit in failing to get something done. I mean, the big wins of November 2014, and I look at it now and say, and so what? What changed?
That's right. Well, and likewise, Steve, what changed in 2010? And conservatives give them another chance, and so. And I think they're angry because of that. They've given Republicans 2 chances in 2010, 2014. What has changed? It is a miracle that we've survived the last 6.5 years of the foolishness that we've seen in Washington, D.C. And I think 2016 is going to be the most important election of our lifetime.
As you look at these 2 candidates, so let's talk about Donald Trump. Do you believe, with your experience and your background, that Donald Trump is the man to be commander-in-chief of the United States?
I believe that, and I don't know yet, but 2016, I believe, is going to be about who is best prepared to be commander-in-chief, who can keep us safe so that we can remain free. I don't know if you saw the interview that General Odierno gave to Jennifer Griffin when he retired on Fox News, but he admitted that President Obama, not one time had ever talked to him or met with him during his entire 4 years as Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army about what we needed, about the future of the U.S. Army or Army requirements. That told me all I needed to know. But there's some other ones out there coming on. I mean, John Kasich is rising, and there's a guy who served 18 years on the Armed Services Committee. People forget that, and they also forget he's the last man to balance America's budget. So it's a very fluid situation.
Yeah, no, he is the candidate that I think has the best chance of rising because I actually, and we talked about this before the break, before we brought you on, was that I believe the dream ticket today for Republicans is John Kasich is your candidate, and Marco Rubio is your vice presidential candidate because he brings youth and also strong defense credentials to the ticket. And I think that's what the best ticket is. Yeah,
you're right. And I've said that for some time. I got to tell you another reason why I like Kasich, Rubio, that ticket. They each reinforce the other one. Both families were immigrants to America. People think of Rubio's family as immigrants, but Kasich's family came from Croatia, worked in the coal mines. He puts, not only does he win Ohio, I believe he wins Pennsylvania.
He just might.
I kind of subscribe to the old Ronald Reagan test. I want the most conservative who can win the general election.
Well, you might be right about Pennsylvania, which people don't give much credence to, but Kasich was born in western PA. He was born of a working-class family in western Pennsylvania, and that's where he hails from, and then he moved slightly over to Ohio. And so I think that he brings a lot to the table. Of course, Rubio's importance in delivering Florida cannot be overstated. It's extremely important if the Republicans expect to win, because the Republicans are not going to get California. They're not going to get Illinois. They're not going to get New York. So the deck is stacked already.
Yep. Kasich puts the Rust Belt in play, no question.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm thinking.
As I said before, a lot of people talk the talk. He did balance the budget. It had not been balanced since 1969. It hadn't been balanced since.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I'm looking at. I will watch to see what happens with this rally against Iran, if you will, and this whole. What do you make of it? I've only got about 30 seconds here, but what do you make of this whole Iran deal in your estimation, from what you know of it? The problem is not a lot of. We don't know enough about it really, but what you know of it? What do you think?
It's bad for America, and I'll tell you why. The one thing why I believe it's so bad, we have no land-based missile defense capability on the east coast of the United States, and this deal will let them continue at some point with intercontinental ballistic missile development. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, and so the most radical regime on the planet has $125 billion and ICBMs to play with. Yeah, a little disconcerting to say the least. Van Hipp, always a pleasure. Glad having you back on the program. Look forward to talking to you sometime soon. We should talk after this Iran rally and see where we are and where John Kasich is and Donald Trump and all the rest. Thank you, sir.
Sounds great. Thank you.
There you have it. On September the 9th, they're going to get together on Capitol Hill to talk about the Iran deal, but it's going to go through. The threshold is so low at 34 senators. What difference does it make? And then there's not enough support to override a presidential veto, so it's all theater, but it's a waste of my time. He put through a bad deal. He got it done because, the Republicans are asleep at the switch. Is that it? What do you think? 888-900-9966. It's the Steve Gruber Show.